Welcome to Welcome with Jesus Bible Study. We're going to be in the book of Second Chronicles, chapter 6, verse 18. That is right here, actually. But will God in every deed dwell with men and on earth? Behold, heaven and the heavens cannot contain thee. How much less than the house which I have built? And I'm going to repeat that. But will God in every deed dwell with men on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heavens cannot contain thee. How much less this house which I have built? God indeed said he would dwell in the temple of Solomon in a special way. And his presence was there, was called I can't say that, Shukra, I don't know how to pronounce that word, but it is meant the glory of God, which dwelt above the ark of the covenant, by the place where the high priest sprinkled the blood of the annual sin offering on the day of atonement. But here God reminds Israel that he does not dwell in temples on the earth, so as to be confined or limited to these places. In fact, that may have been in the Old Testament time, but when Jesus came, the first time he revealed himself to who he really truly was at a well to a Sumerian lady. And she was sitting there, but God, I can't go to these temples. I can't go to Jerusalem. I'm not welcome there. For one, she was a half-breed. Shouldn't be able to go there. Because, back going by the Old Testament, you had to be a pure this and that. But Jesus came to show that there was a difference. That it wasn't, the Jews wouldn't even accept him. Wouldn't even accept his son. So that's okay. He's going to go to the Gentiles, to everybody. And he proved that with Paul. But what was the argument, the statement that he was having with that Samaritan woman at the well? She goes, I can't go there. I can't go to that mountain pray. We're not allowed to go. And he says, the time has come to where you don't need to go there. That you can worship me everywhere. Any and everywhere, wherever you are, you can worship me. Yes, Jesus may not have liked religious, but he still went to the synagogues on occasion and still listened to the word and still preached the word, because the word needs to be shared. The gospel needs to be taught. There's a lot of people nowadays that's not going to churches, which is understandable. God's pretty mad about these churches. He's shutting them down and he's closing them up. Whenever have you seen so much destruction of churches and ever? Churches being burnt down. Churches being struck by lightning. See, all these years there's under God's protection and nothing, no matter what tornado, natural disaster came, they were still standing. 200 plus years old. Now they're just crumbling down. And they're just all going down one by one. You know how many abandoned churches there are in this world right now? Why is that? Because of what the people have done to his church. How his very people that he has chosen, anointed, has turned to Saul, being jealous of David. These people have turned into their own kingdom and not God's. Turned to greed. They're worshiping the wrong God. They're pleasing the people and not pleasing God. They're turning it into a marketplace. Wasn't the very thing that Jesus was saying that if he was to tear down his temple, he would build it right back up? But they was afraid he would tear it down. But what was the first thing he did? He went over there and started flipping the tables too. Right outside the temple and in the temple. Why? Because they have turned the house of prayer, God's house, into a house of thieves. Most of these churches do not keep it sanctified and it's not holy. It's no longer God's house. In fact, you know what? It wasn't It wasn't even God's Jesus in them who started having churches. It was the Romans, the Catholics. They've all turned all into these big old buildings and having it, making it all beautiful and stuff, and that's not what it was. If you truly go back and you go and look up where the actual places were, where the disciples and stuff met, they met in people's homes. It was wherever two or more gathered was his house. The church building itself was never important to God because he didn't dwell there. He dwelt where his people were, where his children were. The buildings didn't matter. That wasn't his houses. Of course, it was supposed to be his houses until we have changed it. Made it about ourselves. Made it about our kingdom. It is not pleasing to God. They're no longer even preaching the truth. They're preaching a false doctrine. Having people pray. Give up all their money to the house for prayer, for pathetic words. Pathetic words is not even coming from God. God gave out special gifts. Gifts. It's not a school you can go through and learn how to give out prophetic words. That's not a gift from God. That's man-made. That's false doctrine. That's false prophetic words. That's coming from the devil himself. That's not coming from God, because God gives out his gifts to his people. It's not something that goes and gets taught. Yes, we have a lot of these Bible colleges out here where a lot of people are coming out to be so-called pastors and preachers, and they're learning and teaching this certain doctrine. But God's anointed, the ones he has called to preach his word, it's a gift. It's a special anointing upon them. Not something taught by man. Stuff that God reveals to them. And that's why you get a lot of these pastors preaching out and teaching the same thing, and it's repetitiveness. But they don't understand the word. What they have become is they're the new Pharisees. They're the new age kind of Pharisees, the new people who's going around pretending that they are from God and they're not. They know the scriptures, they know the verses, they got it memorized, but they don't understand it. And they don't have a relationship with God. God's not revealing anything to them. They're simply just being parrots, repeating what they have been taught by this other person, but they don't know the law for themselves because God hasn't revealed anything special or new to them. Why do you think some of these preachers are not even teaching new things? God has a lot in this Bible to reveal to people. A lot. This whole book is a mystery. There should have been a lot of new things being revealed to these pastors and preachers. Why is it that there's not? It's because they're not in study with God. They're not in a relationship with God. God's not revealing anything to them because they don't even know God's voice. They're simply just practicing what they have been taught. They are simply a parrot repeating what has been fed to them. A false doctrine. There's only one explanation why all of a sudden all these certain preachers always teaching and preaching the same thing at the same time. That literally makes no sense. Not when it's a false doctrine. Not when every single one is, oh, this is how we get people, we get money. We're teaching everybody to sow seeds. That if you give money to this church, you're going to get all this money and God will pay you back. There's a reason for that. It's called the devil. It's called lies. It's called deceit. It's called false preachers. It's called false prophets. God's very angry. Notice that most people who are on fire for God and has the most realization coming from God are not sitting in and was not taught by these so-called schools of false doctrine, by these so-called places that is feeding false doctrine. It's because they got this anointed from God. God came to them. God put his words in their mouth. They're getting this from God himself, not from man. But you have the power to discern who's speaking the truth by being in this word. That's why God gave us this word, so we can know for ourselves.